The human princess was meant to be safe. Instead, she led the charge. From this height, she could see the outer city bustling with humans going about their daily lives. But to her, everything looked small, fragile, and contained. She knew the truth. Humans were considered weak. Not just by the aliens who ruled nearby systems, but even by some humans themselves. They were always told to stay safe, to follow rules, to avoid danger. Safety was the highest priority, or so everyone said. But Alara could never accept that. For years, she had trained secretly. While her tutors taught etiquette, diplomacy, and palace protocols, Alara studied alien tactics, engineering schematics, and combat simulations. She knew that understanding the universe meant more than learning about human customs. The palace walls were filled with reminders of human vulnerability. Guards at every entrance, surveillance drones that hovered silently in every corridor, and a labyrinth of locks and codes that ensured no outsider could enter without permission. And yet, in her heart, she felt restless. She felt the need to test her knowledge, to push the boundaries humans were forced to live within. On this particular day, the palace was alive with excitement. News had arrived that a delegation from the Xylar Dominion would visit for a diplomatic summit. The Xylar were massive, formidable aliens, with gray skin that shimmered under light and eyes that could detect emotions. They had conquered many human colonies, crushing resistance without mercy. The summit was meant to show that humans were obedient, peaceful, and safe under alien scrutiny, but Alara's pulse quickened at the thought. For once, she would have a chance to see her studies tested in the real world. Her advisors warned her repeatedly. "Princess, this is no place for curiosity," her chief counselor said, his voice low and firm. "The Xylar are dangerous. They do not respect human life. You must remain within the palace walls at all times." Alara nodded politely, but her mind was already racing. She would not stay hidden. She could not. As the day progressed, the palace prepared for the gala that would welcome the Xylar delegates. Humans in fine robes moved carefully, their eyes lowered. Alien guards, taller and stronger than any human, stood in strategic positions, their weapons humming faintly. Alara moved among them, observing quietly. She noted small signs that others missed. Subtle shifts in the alien guards, formation, the flicker of unknown devices in the delegation's hands, whispers between Xylar aides that might indicate plans beyond diplomacy. By the time the gala began, the palace was crowded. Chandeliers made of rare crystals sparkled overhead, casting dancing lights on the polished floor. Musicians played alien and human instruments, blending sounds in ways that made the room feel both exotic and tense. Alara wore a simple gown, elegant but understated, and she carried herself with the calm of someone who belonged here. Yet inside, she felt a storm of excitement. The Xylar delegation arrived in sleek, dark ships that hovered above the palace gardens before descending gracefully. Their towering forms drew gasps from many humans. They moved with fluid precision, scanning every corner of the room with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through people. Yet Alara did not flinch. She studied them quietly, memorizing gestures, noticing patterns, and imagining weaknesses that might be exploited. Hours passed, and the summit progressed. Formal speeches were given, handshakes were exchanged, and promises of peace were repeated. Alara found the conversation dull, but her mind was sharp. She noticed that one of the Xylar aides frequently glanced toward the rear of the palace, and sometimes a faint device under the table flickered with light. Something was wrong. The humans around her did not notice, but Alara's instincts screamed. When the gala reached its height, a sudden alarm blared. Red lights flashed across the walls, and drones emitted piercing sirens. The palace shook as a group of unknown ships approached from the sky, breaking formation, and heading directly for the human settlement. Panic rippled through the gala. Human guards scrambled, trying to intercept the threat, but it was clear these were not part of the delegation. These attackers were fast, precise, and deadly. Alara's first instinct was to hide. Her advisors rushed toward her, urging her to follow the secure corridors to the inner vaults. But instead of running, she froze for a moment and assessed the situation. The Xylar delegation seemed startled, their usual calm demeanor shaken. That was her chance. She could act. She could lead. And she did not hesitate. She darted across the gala floor, weaving through panicked humans and confused aliens alike. She reached a console that controlled the palace security systems. With quick hands and clear mind, she rerouted defenses, locked certain doors to trap attackers outside, and opened escape routes for civilians. It was a chaotic dance of technology and intuition. Every move was calculated, yet improvised, because no simulation could predict this exact scenario. As alarms blared and lights flickered, Alara's thoughts were clear. Humans had always been underestimated. They were told to stay safe, to be passive, to survive. But she knew survival was not enough. Humans were clever, inventive, and courageous when pushed. If she acted decisively, she could prove that humanity could do more than hide. Outside, the attackers landed in the palace gardens. Their ships released small, fast drones that began to scout for intruders. Human guards engaged them, but many were outmatched. Alara realized that if she stayed in the palace, she would be trapped along with her people. She needed to move forward to strike back, not just defend. With a small group of palace engineers and brave soldiers, Alara made her way to the outer perimeter. She directed them to set traps using available materials, electrical pulses, barriers, and improvised EMP devices that could disable the enemy drones. Every decision she made was a balance of risk and opportunity. Humans were fragile physically, but their minds were strong, and she relied on that strength. The first wave of attackers was caught off guard. The drones faltered as barriers activated and energy pulses disrupted their systems. Humans, led by Alara's quick thinking, began to push them back. Civilians followed her lead, helping where they could, lifting crates and creating distractions. It was a chaotic battle, but it demonstrated one thing clearly: humans were not helpless. Through the smoke and alarms, Alara spotted a small Xyler reconnaissance unit attempting to infiltrate the palace vault. She recognized their insignia from her studies of Xyler tactics. Without hesitation, she charged, using agility and wit to outmaneuver them. She disabled their equipment and forced them to retreat. For a moment, the chaos faded as she realized the impact of her actions. She had turned a moment of terror into a display of human capability, but the danger was far from over. The main Xyler force had yet to land. Their massive ships hovered ominously in the sky, and she could see more drones descending. The palace defenses were holding, but only barely. The humans around her were exhausted, frightened, but inspired by her leadership. Alara knew she could not wait for reinforcements. She had to lead, to take initiative, to demonstrate that humans could rise above fear. Her thoughts turned to the bigger picture. Humans had always been told to be small, safe, and obedient. But in this moment, she realized that safety alone was not enough. Action, intelligence, and courage could change everything. She began to formulate a plan, one that would use the attackers' own technology against them, that would prove that humans were not prey but worthy adversaries. As the sun set behind the horizon, casting the palace in shadow, Alara looked at her people. They were tired, scared, but ready. They trusted her, and she trusted herself. She was no longer the princess meant to be protected. She was a leader, a strategist, a symbol of human potential. The palace gates shook as the first Xyler assault units approached, and Alara raised her hand, signaling her small army to advance. For the first time in centuries, humans were not hiding. They were fighting back. And they were led by someone who refused to accept that their species was weak. The night air was filled with the sounds of battle, alarms, blaster fire, shouts, and the hum of drones. Yet amidst the chaos, a new energy spread among the humans. Fear was replaced with determination. Panic was replaced with courage. And at the center of it all, Princess Alara moved like a force of nature, guiding, inspiring, and daring her people to rise beyond what everyone thought possible. As the first part of the battle ended and the initial assault was repelled, Alara stood atop the palace walls, overlooking the damage and the defenders. She knew this was only the beginning. The Xyler would return, stronger and more cunning. But for now, humans had shown their strength. The safe life she had been expected to lead was gone. In its place, a new path had begun, one where humans could stand proud, clever, and unafraid in a galaxy that had always doubted them. And in that moment, the human princess, meant to be safe, realized she had become something far greater, a leader capable of inspiring her people to greatness, and perhaps changing the fate of all humanity. The night air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of scorched metal. The palace walls had held, but barely. Alara moved among the defenders, her eyes sharp, her mind calculating every possibility. She could hear the distant thrum of Xyler ships hovering above the city, their engines like deep, ominous drums warning of another assault. Human guards were exhausted, but morale had lifted. For the first time, they felt that they were not just surviving, they could fight back. Alara gathered a small group of engineers, soldiers, and civilians who had shown courage during the initial attack. They huddled behind a damaged barricade, their faces streaked with grime and sweat. "We cannot wait for reinforcements," she said, her voice firm but steady. "The Xylar will return and they will come stronger, but we can turn this to our advantage if we think cleverly. We know their technology now, we know their tactics, and we have something they underestimate: humans." The group exchanged glances. Some were frightened, but others felt a spark of hope. They had followed her orders before, and she had led them to success. Now they would trust her again. Alara explained her plan. They would use the Xylar's own machines against them. With the engineers' help, she could tap into the communication network of the enemy drones and intercept signals. By sending false commands, they could confuse the invaders, making them attack each other instead of humans. It was risky. If they failed, the drones could lock onto the palace defenders and wipe them out. But the alternative was inaction. Humans had always been told to stay safe, to hide, to obey. This was the moment to prove they could do more. As they worked, Alara moved between them, offering instructions and encouragement. She noticed how her presence seemed to calm people, how her determination inspired them to think creatively. She realized that leadership was more than giving orders. It was about showing courage, demonstrating intelligence, and making others believe they could succeed. Outside, the Xylar were regrouping. Their main fleet remained above the city, and smaller assault units began to descend, scanning for remaining defenders. The humans had placed traps around the perimeter, improvised EMP bursts, and barricades of metal and energy fields, but the Xylar were persistent. They sent in reconnaissance drones first, small and fast, to probe the defenses. Alara watched through the palace surveillance system. "Activate the countermeasures now," she commanded. Engineers tapped into the alien signals, sending false instructions. The drones faltered, spinning erratically before crashing into each other. Human soldiers cheered, but there was no time to celebrate. The main assault units were still coming. Using the confusion, Alara led a squad of volunteers outside the palace walls. They moved silently through the garden corridors, avoiding direct confrontation. Their mission was to disable a key Xylar landing pad that would allow more troops to deploy. They carried makeshift explosives and hacking devices, all engineered by the palace's finest minds under Alara's guidance. The first few meters were tense. Shadows shifted in the light of the burning palace, and distant blaster fire echoed through the streets. Humans moved cautiously, knowing that a single misstep could alert the Xylar and draw overwhelming fire. Alara's heart pounded, but she focused on each step, each decision. Her mind raced through strategies she had studied for years, now applied in real combat. They reached the landing pad, and engineers quickly set up the devices. Alara noticed a Xylar patrol approaching from the opposite side. The humans froze, knowing they could be discovered at any moment. Alara signaled, and they split, taking positions to flank the aliens if necessary. The patrol, sensing nothing, moved on, unaware that humans had outsmarted them. A small cheer went up among the defenders as the devices activated, sending a pulse that disabled part of the landing pad's energy field. One fewer deployment route for the enemy. But the victory was temporary. A loud rumble shook the ground as a Xylar assault ship landed nearby. Its doors opened, releasing dozens of armored soldiers. They moved quickly, confident, expecting humans to scatter. Alara stepped forward, her voice rising over the chaos. "Hold your ground, remember what you are," she shouted. Humans who had been uncertain now saw a leader who did not fear the enemy. Their fear transformed into courage, and they prepared to fight. The battle that followed was fierce and chaotic. Humans used the terrain, improvised weapons, and clever tactics to slow the Xylar advance. Alara directed movements, signaling when to fire, when to retreat, and when to use traps. She knew the human strength was not in brute force but in adaptability. Every time the Xylar expected a straightforward attack, they found themselves outmaneuvered by small squads who thought faster and acted smarter. During a brief lull, Alara spotted a group of Xylar soldiers attempting to flank the human defenders. Without hesitation, she led a small counter-unit, moving through narrow alleys and using shadows to her advantage. They ambushed the flanking group, disabling several soldiers with precision strikes and forcing the rest to retreat. Her actions were not only effective but symbolic. Humans would not cower, they would fight strategically and with intelligence. As the night progressed, the palace defenders began to gain the upper hand. The Xylar, expecting an easy conquest, were frustrated and confused. Their communications were jammed, their strategies disrupted, and their forces slowly diminished. Humans, once considered fragile, had become a force to be reckoned with. Alara moved through the battlefield, checking on squads, offering guidance and boosting morale. She saw a young engineer struggling with a heavy device and ran to help him, lifting it together. "We are not just surviving," she said. "We are proving who we are. Remember this moment. Remember what humans can do when we refuse to be weak." Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the courtyard. A Xylar ship, trying to deploy reinforcements, had been sabotaged by one of Alara's teams. Smoke and fire filled the area and debris scattered across the ground. The humans used the moment to advance, pushing back the remaining Xylar forces. The defenders were exhausted, but adrenaline and determination kept them moving. Alara realized that this fight was not just about survival. It was about reputation, about showing the galaxy that humans were not prey. The Xylar had underestimated them, and that mistake could change everything. With careful planning and bold action, humans could take control of their destiny, even in a galaxy where they were considered weak. In the midst of the chaos, Alara received a signal from the palace command center. More Xylar ships were detected approaching from a different direction. The humans could not hold them all with their current strength. Alara needed a bold move, something that could turn the tide decisively. She gathered her top lieutenants and shared her plan. They would take the fight to the enemy fleet itself. Using captured Xylar crafts and human ingenuity, they prepared a small strike team. The mission was dangerous, almost suicidal, but it offered the only chance to prevent total destruction. Alara volunteered to lead the squad herself. "I will not send my people into danger while I stay behind," she said. "If we are to prove ourselves, we must show courage, and courage starts with leadership." The strike team moved out under the cover of darkness, using stealth and speed to approach the Xylar fleet. Alara's knowledge of their technology allowed them to bypass defenses and target weak points in the ship's systems. They disabled weapons arrays, jammed communications, and created confusion among the enemy ranks. Every success brought renewed hope to the human defenders still in the palace, who saw their leader taking the fight to the very heart of the threat. Meanwhile, back at the palace, humans continued to hold their ground. Civilians helped where they could, moving supplies, tending to the wounded, and reinforcing barricades. The sight of their princess leading the strike inspired them to extraordinary feats of bravery. Even the most fearful soldiers found new strength in her example. As the first part of the night passed, it became clear that the humans had not only survived the initial assault, but had turned the battle into their own advantage. The Xylar were confused, frustrated, and forced onto the defensive, a reversal almost unheard of. Alara, though exhausted, knew this was only the beginning. The true test of human ingenuity and courage was still to come. But for the first time, humans had demonstrated that they could fight, think, and lead like equals in a galaxy that had always doubted them. Alara looked at her people, tired but determined, and felt a surge of pride. They had been underestimated, told to stay safe and kept small, but they had proven themselves capable of great things. The night had shown that humans were clever, resilient, and fearless when led with intelligence and courage. She knew the Xylar would regroup and return stronger, but that knowledge did not frighten her. Humans had discovered their own strength, and with leadership, strategy, and courage, they could face any challenge. And as she prepared for the next move, Alara realized that this was just the beginning of a story in which humans would no longer be mere spectators. They would take charge, shape their destiny, and perhaps, one day, lead the galaxy itself. For the first time in centuries, humans were not hiding. They were not waiting to be saved. They were fighting back, led by someone who refused to accept weakness, who saw opportunity in danger, and who understood that true strength came not from size or power, but from the courage, intelligence, and heart of humanity itself. The horizon of Ardent 7 glowed red as fires. From the battle reflected off the clouds. Smoke swirled through the city streets, and the distant hum of Xylar ships filled the air like a terrible storm. Human defenders, though exhausted from the previous night's assaults, were more determined than ever. They had seen their princess lead, and that vision had changed something fundamental within them. Fear had been replaced with courage. Alara stood on a ridge overlooking the city, her eyes scanning the sky. Several captured Xylar crafts waited nearby, ready for the next move. She had studied the enemy for months, learning their strategies, understanding their technology, and imagining every weakness. But now, she would put theory into practice on a scale she had never attempted before. This was no longer a defensive skirmish. It was time for humans to take the fight directly to the Xylar fleet. Her strike team gathered around her, a mixture of engineers, soldiers, and civilians trained in quick combat tactics. Each member had proven their skill and bravery in the earlier skirmishes. They looked to her for guidance, their trust absolute. Alara's voice was calm but commanding. Today, we are no longer waiting for danger to come to us. We will strike at the enemy where they least expect it. Remember what we are. Remember what humans can do when we refuse to be weak. Follow me, and together we will show them what they underestimated. The team moved swiftly toward the edge of the city, using cover from damaged buildings and energy barriers. The captured Xylar ships were sleek, fast, and silent, designed for surprise attacks and efficiency. Alara had spent hours learning their controls, mastering their systems, and planning how to use them against their creators. Now she climbed into the cockpit of a lead craft, her hands steady, her mind sharp. "Coordinates set," one of the engineers said, monitoring the data. "We can disable their forward weapons if we hit precisely." Alara nodded. "Good, stay close. Precision over speed, we cannot afford mistakes." As they launched, the Xylar fleet loomed in the distance like a black wall against the stars. Their ships moved with intimidating coordination, expecting humans to remain passive as always. But humans, led by Alara, had no intention of being passive. The smaller fleet approached silently, using debris and asteroid fragments in orbit around Ardent 7 to mask their movement. The first strike was quick and calculated. Alara guided her ship directly toward the flagship, weaving between enemy fire, dodging plasma blasts with a mixture of skill and intuition. Behind her, the other human pilots followed, synchronized with perfect timing. Engineers on board hacked into the Xylar targeting systems mid-flight, sending false signals that caused several drones to turn on each other. Confusion spread among the Xylar ranks, their flawless formations breaking as humans exploited every weakness. Alara's pulse raced, but she stayed focused. This was more than a battle, it was a demonstration of human ingenuity. Each maneuver, each calculated risk, showed that humans could think faster and adapt better than anyone expected. Her ship dodged a plasma volley, and she fired a carefully aimed shot at a critical power conduit on the enemy flagship. Sparks erupted, and alarms blared across the Xylar fleet. From below, the palace defenders cheered as the humans took the fight into space. Civilians and soldiers alike watched, inspired and awed. The princess who was meant to be safe had become a commander, a symbol of human potential. Even those who had doubted themselves now understood that humans were capable of more than survival. They could lead, strategize, and triumph. Alara's team pressed the attack, disabling weapon systems on several smaller ships while avoiding unnecessary destruction. Their goal was not to annihilate the Xylar, but to demonstrate that humans could control the battlefield. Clever use of the enemy's own technology, precise strikes, and coordinated maneuvers allowed them to achieve results far beyond their numbers. The flagship attempted to retaliate directly. Its main weapons activated, massive energy beams slicing through the void toward the human ships. Alara's heart pounded as she calculated trajectories and escape paths in real time. She maneuvered her ship, drawing the enemy fire in a way that created openings for the others to strike. The humans attacked decisively, exploiting every misstep, every moment of hesitation by the Xylar. Below them, the palace continued to defend itself. Human engineers maintained energy shields, soldiers coordinated counterattacks, and civilians assisted wherever needed. The combination of space strikes and ground defense created a synchronized battle that confused the Xylar entirely. Their once unshakable confidence began to crack, revealing vulnerability that humans had long been told they lacked. Alara's eyes caught sight of a secondary fleet approaching from the planet's dark side. Reinforcements had arrived, but she had anticipated them. "Prepare the ambush," she commanded. Using orbital debris and the shadowed side of the planet, the humans set traps for the new arrivals. When the Xylar fleet entered the kill zone, they were hit with electromagnetic pulses, disabling several ships before they could fire a single shot. Confusion spread quickly through the ranks of the invaders. Even in the chaos, Alara remained calm. She communicated with her team in short, precise bursts. "Left flank, push forward, target the engines, avoid civilian zones." Every command was clear, every decision strategic. Her leadership inspired confidence, and the humans executed with precision, proving that courage was most effective when paired with intelligence. As the battle intensified, a small squad of Xylar boarding crafts attempted to breach the palace. Alara, seeing this, immediately redirected part of her team to intercept. They moved swiftly, disabling the crafts mid-flight with careful calculations and improvised tactics. One by one, they forced the invaders back, reclaiming territory that had been considered lost. The Xylar commander grew increasingly desperate. He had never encountered humans who could plan, adapt, and execute so effectively. His confidence, once unshakable, began to waver. He attempted a direct attack on Alara's ship, expecting to intimidate the humans into submission. But Alara anticipated his move, using the flagship's own systems against it. She maneuvered her ship into a blind spot in the enemy sensors and fired a concentrated energy pulse at the targeting array. The flagship faltered, giving her team the opening they needed to strike decisively. Throughout the fight, Alara never lost sight of her mission. She understood that this was about more than victory. It was about proving that humans, long underestimated, were capable of greatness. Every successful maneuver, every calculated risk, reinforced that point to her people and the galaxy alike. Humans had been taught to fear, to hide, and to obey, but they were proving that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome even the most formidable adversaries. The turning point came when Alara led her team in a daring move toward the heart of the enemy fleet. Using stealth, clever maneuvers, and precise attacks, they disabled the flagship's primary weapons and communication systems. The Xylar, confused and unable to coordinate, began retreating in disarray. Human ships, both in orbit and on the planet below, pressed their advantage, pushing the enemy further back. Even as the Xylar fled, Alara remained vigilant. She knew the battle was not over. The enemy was powerful, experienced, and dangerous. But humans had demonstrated something extraordinary. They could fight, plan, and lead like equals. The balance of power had shifted, if only slightly, and that shift would resonate across the galaxy. When the battle finally quieted, the humans looked around at what they had accomplished. Buildings were damaged, fires still burned, and the air was thick with smoke. But the humans had survived, and more than that, they had triumphed. The Xylar were forced to retreat, their fleet scattered and their confidence shaken. And at the center of it all stood Princess Alara, no longer just a symbol of safety, but a true leader, strategist, and hero. Civilians and soldiers alike gathered around her as she returned to the city. Their cheers were loud, genuine, and filled with admiration. Alara smiled, exhausted but proud. She had led her people to victory, showing that humans were not weak, fragile, or helpless. They were clever, brave, and capable of extraordinary feats when guided by determination and intelligence. As the night drew on, Alara stood atop the palace walls, looking at the stars above. She thought of the Xylar, their arrogance, and their underestimation of humans. It was a mistake that would not be repeated. Humans had claimed their place, not by sheer strength, but through courage, strategy, and unity. She understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, but humanity had discovered its own power, and nothing could take that away. Her mind turned to the future. The humans had proven themselves in this battle, but there were more threats ahead. Other alien species, equally powerful, would watch the events of this night with interest and perhaps fear. Alliances would shift, and humans would have to navigate a galaxy that now recognized them as a force to be reckoned with. Alara felt a surge of determination. She would lead her people, teach them to think, plan, and act, and ensure that humans were never again underestimated. She looked down at the people around her. Civilians rebuilding, soldiers tending to the wounded, engineers repairing defenses. Each of them had played a part in the victory. Each of them had proven that humans could rise above fear and limitations. And she, their princess, had guided them, not by hiding them from danger, but by showing them that courage and intelligence were their greatest weapons. For the first time, humanity was not only surviving, humanity was leading. And in that moment, Princess Alara realized that being safe was never the goal. The goal was to inspire, to lead, and to prove that humans could achieve greatness in a galaxy that had always doubted them. And so, as the fires of battle smoldered and the stars shone brightly above Ardent 7, Alara made a silent promise. This victory was only the beginning. Humans would continue to rise, to learn, to fight, and to shine in ways no one had imagined. And she would lead them every step of the way, a princess who had been meant to be safe but had become a symbol of human courage, intelligence, and unstoppable determination. The morning after the battle, the skies over Ardent 7 were calm, though the scars of the conflict remained. Buildings were damaged, smoke still drifted from the outskirts of the city, and the streets were littered with debris. Yet amidst the destruction, there was a sense of triumph. Humans had survived, humans had fought back, humans had won. Princess Alara walked through the city, her presence drawing attention wherever she went. Civilians cheered, soldiers saluted, and even the engineers who had spent the previous night repairing defenses paused to acknowledge her. For the first time, humans did not see her merely as royalty to be protected. They saw her as a leader who had guided them through one of the darkest nights in their history. Alara moved among the people, stopping to speak with anyone who had played a role in the defense. She offered words of encouragement, praise, and gratitude. "You were brave," she told a young soldier who had faced Xyler drones without hesitation. "Your courage saved lives. Remember this. Humans are not weak. You are the proof." The soldiers and civilians felt a new confidence settle over them. For generations, humans had been underestimated, kept behind protective walls, and told that survival was their greatest achievement. Now they understood that courage, intelligence, and unity could make them a formidable force. The events of the previous night had changed everything. In the palace, Alara convened a council with the remaining advisors and military leaders. They reviewed the battle's details, analyzed the damage, and planned the next steps. Alara listened carefully, offering suggestions and strategies. Her decisions were precise, practical, and inspired by both logic and experience. She had transformed from a princess, meant to be sheltered, into a leader who could guide humanity through complex challenges. One of the alien envoys, a representative of a neutral species observing the battle, arrived unexpectedly. They had witnessed the humans' courage and strategy firsthand and were eager to speak with Alara. "Your people have done something remarkable," the envoy said, their voice carrying both awe and respect. "Never before have we seen humans display such intelligence, coordination, and bravery. You have earned not just survival, but recognition." Alara accepted the praise with humility, knowing that this acknowledgement was just the beginning. Recognition from other species would bring new opportunities and new challenges. Humans had taken their first step into a larger galaxy, one where their ingenuity and courage could no longer be ignored. Despite the victory, Alara knew that the Xyler would not forget this defeat. They were a powerful empire, and their pride had been wounded. She began planning long-term defenses, training programs, and alliances that would prepare humans for future confrontations. Her leadership extended beyond immediate survival. It focused on the growth and resilience of her people. In the days that followed, humans rebuilt their city with determination. Engineers repaired damaged infrastructure, soldiers trained more rigorously, and civilians assisted in every way they could. Alara oversaw the efforts personally, moving among her people, demonstrating that leadership was about participation, not just command. She encouraged innovation, creativity, and resourcefulness, ensuring that humans would be better prepared for any future challenges. One afternoon, while surveying the repairs to the palace walls, Alara received a message from another human colony on a distant planet. The colony was under threat from raiders, and they needed guidance and support. Alara felt a surge of determination. The battle on Ardent 7 had shown humans' potential, but it was only the beginning. There were countless other humans across the galaxy who depended on leadership, strategy, and courage. She convened her council once more and outlined a plan to assist the threatened colony. Small, efficient strike teams would provide support, using the same tactics that had proven effective against the Xyler. Humans would demonstrate once again that they were not to be underestimated, and that clever strategy combined with bravery could overcome even the most formidable enemies. As preparations were made, Alara reflected on the transformation that had occurred. She thought about the young soldiers who had discovered their strength, the engineers who had applied their knowledge in unexpected ways, and the civilians who had risen to the occasion. Humanity had learned an invaluable lesson. Being safe was not the same as being strong. True strength came from courage, intelligence, and the willingness to take action when it mattered most. Alara's own growth was evident as well. She had always been curious and intelligent, but the battles had forged her into a leader capable of inspiring and guiding others. She understood that leadership was not about power or authority. It was about responsibility, vision, and example. By facing danger alongside her people, she had earned their trust and respect, and in doing so, she had strengthened the very spirit of humanity itself. In the weeks that followed, humans expanded their defenses, established training academies, and began exploring diplomatic relations with nearby species. News of their victory on Ardent 7 spread quickly, and humans who had once been overlooked were now regarded with respect and curiosity. The Xyler, though humiliated, continued to monitor them closely, and other alien empires began reconsidering their assumptions about humanity. Alara continued to lead with clarity and purpose. She emphasized collaboration, ingenuity, and preparedness, ensuring that humans would be able to face any future challenge with confidence. She knew that the galaxy was vast, full of dangers and opportunities alike, and that the survival of her people depended on their ability to think, adapt, and act decisively. During one evening, as the twin suns set over the repaired city, Alara walked through the palace gardens. Soldiers and civilians mingled freely, their faces showing relief, pride, and renewed hope. She stopped at a fountain, watching the water catch the last rays of sunlight. She thought of the journey ahead, the battles yet to come, the alliances to build, and the role humans would play in shaping the galaxy. A young engineer approached her, carrying a small device he had designed during the recent battle. "Princess," he said, bowing slightly, "we've learned so much from your leadership. I feel ready for anything now." Alara smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are ready because you chose to be," she said. "Courage does not come from being told to fight. It comes from believing that you can, and humans have proven that we can achieve great things when we act together." Her words spread quickly among the people, reinforcing a culture of confidence, creativity, and courage. Humans were no longer meant to be fragile or passive. They were inventors, strategists, and warriors. They were capable of greatness, and they had a leader who had shown them the way. Months passed, and the lessons of the battle on Ardent 7 continued to resonate. Humans trained their young, strengthened their colonies, and explored the stars with renewed ambition. The story of Princess Alara's leadership became legendary, not just among humans, but across species. It was a tale of courage, intelligence, and determination, a story that reminded all that humans, though underestimated, could rise to any challenge. Alara herself never sought glory. She focused on her people, on teaching them to think, act, and inspire others. She established academies, training centers, and councils where humans could learn from experience and share knowledge. Every action, every decision, reinforced the idea that humans were not defined by weakness, but by their courage, creativity, and resolve. One day, while standing on the palace balcony, Alara received a message from a distant star system. Another colony required guidance, another challenge awaited, and humanity's story was far from over. She smiled, a mixture of determination and excitement in her eyes. The galaxy was vast, but humans were ready. They had learned to face danger, to act decisively, and to lead. And she, their princess who had once been meant to be safe, would continue to guide them into a future full of possibilities. As she gazed at the stars, she realized that the safe life she had been expected to live was never truly hers. Her destiny, and the destiny of all humanity, was far greater. Humans had proven themselves capable of courage, intelligence, and leadership. They had earned respect, recognition, and the right to shape their future. And with that knowledge, Alara felt a quiet but unshakable pride. She turned to the people around her, soldiers, engineers, civilians, and knew that the galaxy would never again underestimate humanity. The princess who had been meant to be safe had led her people to victory, inspired them to greatness, and shown that humans could achieve anything when courage and intelligence guided their actions. In that moment, the stars above Ardent 7 seemed brighter, filled with promise. Humanity was no longer hidden, no longer fragile, no longer passive. Humans had claimed their place in the galaxy, and under Princess Alara's leadership, they would continue to rise, fight, and shine. The story of their courage was only beginning, and the future was theirs to shape. And so, as night fell and the repaired city glimmered under the twin suns' fading light, Princess Alara stood ready. She had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of, and she would continue to guide them, ensuring that humanity's courage, intelligence, and determination would leave a mark across the stars. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were leaders, innovators, and warriors. And their journey had only just begun. The human princess was meant to be safe. Instead, she led the charge.